I'm just going to do a short demonstration of a watercolour of an elephant. So while the water is still wet, I'm going ahead and I'm picking a very light raw sienna colour and I'm just dabbing on. I'm not going to worry about brushing across. I'm just dabbing on the colour quite loose. Using a bit of Payne's grey, but I'm not actually using it on its own because it's too strong. So I'm just putting it across this side of the trunk, just at that side of the head. On its own it looks very dull and it dries flat. That is why I'm mixing it with the other colour. And so I'm trying to get the form and the shape of the elephant. I'm darkening up behind the back here where his tusk is coming out, just so that you can see that's in shadow. I'm just trying to look at the light. The light's probably going to go on the top of his head. So he's going to be lighter up here at the top of him and darker under here. So I'm just using the grey now under the ear, because the ear will obviously cause a shadow, and let that drop down. You can see it's dropping down into the colour underneath. It's quite nice. This is just like the first coat, and you can see it just forms. It's going to be very dark, obviously, you know, under the tusks and behind the trunk and that, but you know, we can build up the colour. I'm just going to get it, as I say, and everything is just very loosely done at the moment. Behind the ear, for instance, that's going to be another shadow, so I've just put a bit of grey on there, and I'm just trying to merge it into the face a little bit. Is get a yellowy ochre colour and put it under behind the back there, and again very similar to what I've done originally. I'm not washing it all the way across. I'm going to put it on and then drop some burnt sienna. So now I've done that, what I'm going to now do while this is dry is get a small brush and start to tackle the eye, because we're going to put some other colours on here, but it's too wet at the moment. So I've got a very tiny watercolour brush, and I'm going to go for a bit of Payne's grey and a bit of burnt umber together, because as I said, the Payne's grey is a bit too strong on its own. I've got an indication I'm going to have the eye about here, so it's going to be a very small eye. So I'm not using much water on the brush, I'm just doing it very slow, you know, not very loose. They're quite small, the elephants, the eyes for the whole of their body. So just trying to get that in there. He's on the slant, the eye is on the slant rather than looking straight at us, is on the slant. So I'm just going to give an indication underneath of just putting a little bit of water and just to soak that in. I'm just trying to get a little bit of lines, because obviously, as you know, with the elephants, they're full of, the skin is kind of very textured. So I'm just trying to get a bit of an eyelid there on him. So I've just watered down my Payne's grey, a bit darker under there. So I'm trying to get the eye, so it's coming a bit more forward. Probably going to put a bit of brown in there, so it's not quite all grey as such. The thing with, it's hard to, on a small space, leave enough for the eye little bit glint, but we can always put that on later with a little bit of acrylics or a tiny little bit of pastel, just to give you an indication of the little glint in the eye, which always gives a sparkle to the elephant. Eye, we're hardly going to see, we're just basically going to see a little bit of an eyelash and an indication you've got an eye over there. What I'm now doing is going to go back over where the tusk is and just kind of going over the top of it, just to give myself an indication where it is. It's underneath the eye, more or less, and then just put a bit of water in it and just soften it in. I'm still using like the watered down Payne's grey, and I'm just going to go around there just to draw it in. I don't want it looking too big, so I'm just going to give myself an idea where it is. And whereas I had that dark line, I can now water that line in, because I'm trying to get the idea the tusk is coming out from behind the elephant there. So it's starting to take a little bit shape. What we're going to make it a little bit easier is just put indication we've got some lines coming over on top of him to get the idea of the tusks, the trunk, I mean, the lines on there. So I'm just going to put a little bit of a brown with the Payne's grey, just mix, just very light at the moment, because it doesn't matter that the line's broken, it's just an indication we've got his trunk coming over. This one I might have done a bit too dark, so I'm just going to water it in a little bit. So if it is a bit too strong, while it's wet, I'm going to just take off some of it and just loosen it a little bit so it's not a bit too much. And just drag that down. We're still continuing with this. We've just been putting some indication of some lines. I'm just rubbing that out a bit so it's not quite so heavy. Just getting the idea that, you know, just to see what we're doing. We can darken these up later, but we're just getting the idea where the trunk is. And just brushing across there, just so the trunk comes a bit forward. That way, and soften that grey so it's not a bit too strong. So we've got that. So we've got the idea the trunk's coming over now, so we can start to see the shape of the elephant. We want to go a bit darker under his ear, so I'm using the same two colours basically, and just kind of putting the line in and then watering the line in. So you're getting the shape of the ear, but it's too strong, so you're just like taking it off across into the elephant. So you can start to see that he's got one, the shading comes behind the ear. Also at the bottom of the ear, we just want to accentuate the shading there. So I'm just going, we're going to go over here now and just put some dark over here with the side of the brush. But as you can see, I'm going across the top and I'm trying to get the leathery look that the skin of the elephant has. This is called dry brush. You can also do just a tiny bit of the brown just on the trunk, because the tusks, getting confused. The tusks are white, but they have a little bit of a colour on them. So I've just introduced the brown underneath just to give it a bit more three-dimensional, because if I left it completely white it would look flat. So I've put a little bit of the brown on there and just gives it some glow to the tusks. And darken that background up behind the elephant. As you can see, it's quite dry. So again, I'm probably not going to dry brush it much, but I'm just going to dry brush it a bit behind the elephant. Water him a little bit there. I think his trunk needs to come in, so I'm just going to put a little bit of the brown in with there and just alter the shape of that trunk going around there. So I'm just going to put a bit of brown there and just going to go over the trunk, the bit that joins the tusk there. On this side, because the light's coming from that way, so the elephant's going to be darker on this side. So I'm just getting a big brush now and just going over the top there, just so that way round this trunk looks lighter on that side. If it's too much, you can always put a little bit, trouble when it dries, it always dries lighter, so just putting it in. I'm also going up here with some of these lines, you know, on the forehead and that on the elephant, so just kind of put them in, and then what I'm going to do is water them over just so they kind of blend in a little bit. And you can see it's got quite nice deep colour browns, which I wanted to emphasise. I'm just going to water that out a little bit because the eye's there, but I just want to show that's not the eye.